Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to today's Disruptive Technology talk on the Google Hangout. I'm Larry, and Trish has kind of given me the reins today to talk about today's topic, which is going to be sourcing out parts for different types of disruptive technology. Now, that might be a hard challenge, or not a hard challenge, but it might be a challenge for some companies when they're just startups to source out things for disruptive technology. However, there's some companies like Google which have a really easy time sourcing out technologies or sourcing out things for technologies simply because people are coming to Google with technology. So for them, it's relatively easy. But there are those companies out there with new technologies in all areas of society, pretty much in general, with internet technology, with medical technologies. There's pretty much everything out there. I find for us, which is like for first-hand experience for King Sunshine Solar Systems, our main challenge has always been to find things locally, which is usually tough. However, there are things that can be sourced out locally, but when it gets to the nitty-gritty of a lot of the components for our machines, we source them out globally. And what that means is, for example, this one switch that we've been waiting to get, that's been a very hard part for us to find the right part that'll do the job. After several prototype testing switches, we haven't been able to find the right one. However, now we've put the word out there that there's a problem with the switches that we've been using. So finding a hermetically sealed switch has been a real challenge. So right as of today, we have a company in the US working on it, and a company in China is also working on it. It seems like both of them might have the solution. So it's really good to see that we're going to be getting a switch from both manufacturers to try. And it'd be really nice if they both work. When sourcing out these parts for our technology, and I imagine other companies' technologies as well, it seems like when we started with the project, we were sourcing out an awful lot of stuff just locally and in the United States. We never really, I was never motivated to look to outside of the country, or because the Americans are right next door for us. They're our neighbors, so always the United States has always seemed to be able to provide us with whatever we needed. And so when we started, that's really what where we went to get parts. However, as things progress and as we start getting closer to our goal, certain parts started getting really difficult to find. I can't remember what the latest one was prior to the switch. However, the power popper. What the heck is a power popper? Okay. Is the power popper some kind of suggestion? Okay. I don't know if everybody could see that, but Trish was showing up holding up some kind of toy. The power popper. We started getting.
It's not me. It's my son William with his toy, and then my other son has his friends here, so it's kind of noisy. So.
Okay, I'll keep going. So the other parts that we started finding from the U.S., a lot of our silicon tubing we found two manufacturers in the United States. However, silicon tubing is a finished product, and it's not really a disruptive technology. It's been around for a long, long time, as well as silicon. And that brings us to finding the right silicon to work with some of the components that we use, because we had to custom make a lot of components for the kaboomer, and finding those was really a challenge. The actual I remember years ago with another company I was working with my first patent, we used to be able to get silicons and primers and all these different things, thinners, were all available from one company in the States called Dow Corning. And now there's a whole bunch of different companies that supply this material. Dow Corning is no longer really in the silicon business, and so they've started up another company called Diameter, which essentially sells the same products that they were selling years ago. However, the silicon manufacturer has now sourced out certain components and products that they used to make locally in the United States are now made in other countries, some in Europe. So it took, whereas for us sourcing out certain components for the kaboomer, we had to look to, I think, Belgium to get a primer that used to be manufactured in the United States. And I can remember a long, long time ago when I ordered that, I'm pretty sure I ordered the same primer, if not the same primer, it was something very close to it for bonding silicon to steel. And when I ordered it years ago, it came from the United States. It took us maybe 10 days to get to Canada with this primer, the same primer 20 years later with the global economy. Basically 2 months we had to wait for the same product, and it had to come from Europe. So it took a lot longer to actually get that part. So I'm not sure exactly if this is happening to a lot of other companies that are coming up with products that are based on disruptive technology, but I could imagine if it's happening to us, it's probably happening to a lot of other companies, especially in the solar energy market. Today, one of my challenges, or one of my tasks was today, is with our solar heat collector, we've always had an issue of the target or the focal point of the Fresnel lens being quite large. And so when it goes into the kaboomer, the concentrated sunlight, there is a spot that's about 2 inches or 1.5 inches in diameter, which goes into the kaboomer, and that's the focal point of the Fresnel lens. And now, something that, because we made some changes, that one spot is also now got this huge halo around it, which is about this big, about 6 or 7 inches in diameter. And so it started causing a problem, and so today I was working on solving this problem. I thought, okay, well, if we're having a problem with the spot being too big to go fit into the kaboomer like we want it to, how do we get rid of the outside? And so we started using a heat shield to block that halo of energy. And then I thought to myself, boy, that's really stupid. We're trying to consume all that energy, all that concentrated sunlight into the kaboomer. So I got to thinking that there must be a smarter way to do that. And so to make a long story short, I ended up coming up with something that's pretty much local parts to put together in order to concentrate that sunlight into the kaboomer more efficiently. So as far as sourcing out the part for that was relatively easy. However, sourcing out the information because I don't know all the facts and figures, I have to go to outside sources and engineers and talk to engineers for that information. So that's essentially what I had to do today. I had to talk to an optical engineering company and find out what do I do, because I'm not trained in that area. So I ended up contacting another American company that actually gave me the best suggestion that I've had so far. Because I was looking at solving the problem by using a lens, and they said, no, instead of using a lens, you want to make kind of a funnel out of reflective material, like a funnel mirror. And so I thought, well, yeah, I kind of thought about that, but I didn't know if it would be a good idea. And it now turns out that that's probably the best choice. So, yeah, sourcing out the parts for any kind of technology that's disruptive, I think it can cover a lot of different things. Like what comes to mind is a company like Google, like I was saying. They were looking at, I know they offer an operating system with Google, which is a disruptive technology. I'm not sure exactly where the Google operating system came from, but I looked at it a little bit, and it seemed to be very similar to the Microsoft operating system. And so when I looked into a little bit more information on disruptive technology, one of the first hits that came up was on Google, and it was about that exact thing, right to the point, was that Google had come up with an operating system that was affecting the business model of Microsoft. So this goes on in all types of industries. So I know I know quite a bit of history on the Tesla automobile and the first prototype that was made. Can't remember. I think it was. I don't remember the exact name of it, but it was a sports car that was basically run on a whole bunch of computer laptop batteries for power. And the makers of that first prototype Tesla or electric car that Tesla bases their business model on, was all put together by using laptop batteries. And it was a very heavy car, but the mind-blowing thing about it was that it was the fastest car on the planet. It went from 0 to 60, I believe, in 3 seconds. Pretty much like sitting on a rocket. And I think the main reason for that was that because the batteries in the motor are a direct, there's no camshaft and pistons and all this stuff. The energy goes to the motor, and the power goes right to the wheels, so that there's no spinning of tires and anything. It's a very efficient transfer of energy to the wheels, and that's why that car is so fast. So for them to put together that car, I'm not sure exactly where they got their idea for, well, let's use laptop batteries. It made a lot of sense because the laptop batteries are rechargeable and quite powerful. As anybody who owns a laptop knows, a laptop can run for a long time without being plugged in, and it's essentially, in my opinion, a laptop isn't too much different than a PC. So that's pretty impressive. And now I believe that Tesla has stuck to that idea, and they are using the same model, but I don't think they're using laptop batteries. I read that they're using some kind of batteries that stand straight up and down. Where they're getting those batteries, I imagine a lot of them are coming from Asia. I can't see batteries like that being manufactured in North America. It just doesn't strike me as being the thing. So there you have it, a prototype, that electric car that started off by using laptop batteries, which are pretty common. You know, laptops kick the bucket and stop working, and you have to go out and get another laptop. Well, the batteries were taken out and found another use for it. And they probably actually went out and bought a lot of batteries as well for making the power for that for that car. And
So
so
I just wanted to chime in. I got a lot of background noise here tonight, so I've been muted, but I'm listening, and I just wanted to chime in and steer the conversation a little bit towards. I think some of the technologies out there may struggle the same way that we have in the past with having to or finding that when you Google search for parts that you're looking for, you're unable to source them, and then you have to turn to inventing.
I didn't catch that last part.
When you can't source the parts and you have to make them yourself.
Oh, okay. That's a really good point. For King Sunshine Solar Systems with their with the tracking motors, I think when we went to a couple of the trade shows, we saw a lot of the tracking systems that were for sale, and they were super duper heavy duty and virtually indestructible. To me, they're kind of over-engineered. However, we saw some tracking systems that were probably well suited for huge array of photovoltaics. However, for our application, we didn't need something that heavy duty. So we ended up making double reduction gear motors out of using automotive parts. It was really quite simple. There wasn't a lot of experimenting. It was just I pretty much had a design. Excuse me. I pretty much had a design that I had in my mind, and it was based on some of the double reduction gear systems that I've seen using worm gears, and that's essentially how power electric windows motors work. They use a worm gear. And so we could have probably went out and spent $1,000 on a couple of motors to do the job, but we ended up making our own, which we will be using in our production model as well. But we made our own out of recycled automotive parts, these motors that come out of power electric window motors. There's usually nothing wrong with them, even if they've been in service for a lot of time. It's usually electronics, like Trish mentioned that in another hangout, that it's the electronic switches that usually go, not the motors. The motors are built to last a very long time. Just like any other electric motor, there's very few electric motors that last, less than 5 years. Like your refrigerator, compressor, and stuff like that. Those motors last a really long time, and they run quite frequently. So the little motors that we made worked fine, and that's what we'll be producing or we'll be showing people how to produce them. Plus, we'll also be producing them in countries that don't have the resources to do that. So we found a few things where there's some countries out there that don't even have some of the components, and so they have to order them in.
What about there was a few times where you looked around and tried to order something and you could not find anything, and then I remember there was some small construction going on in regards to some of the parts. Do you want to talk about that process a little bit?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. For which part?
I don't know. There was stuff.
Sorry. I'm not sure what part that would be off the top of my head.
There was a lot of molds that you were talking about and stuff that you just did not find. And then you started talking about, oh, we have more IP, and you don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Right. They're with making some of the parts for the kaboomer, definitely we've come up with more intellectual property just because we needed the parts, and the parts didn't exist. And that happens quite a bit. There's so many components on disruptive technology that don't already exist, and so most companies, when they do come up with new technology, they end up manufacturing custom parts, and those custom parts are strictly for the products that they produce. Some of them can cross over to other competitor products. Like I'm sure there was things that Henry Ford invented and manufactured for his cars that were easily transferred over to Chrysler and to Chevy and all the other car manufacturers that started cropping up at about the same time. So, in fact, I think it was Chrysler that took apart some kind of car over and over and over, trying to figure out how to do it, and that's how he ended up building his own cars. Was by studying someone else's model and making some slight changes to it so that it would satisfy his needs for his car company. And well, I think every company that kind of does that. I think that the parts that we had to custom make for our machine are also going to be used in other people's solar tracking machines. I don't know how much longer photovoltaics, the way they are right now, are going to last, because when our machine does come onto the market and everybody sees that it produces 4 times as much power as the photovoltaics they have, I think people are going to be a little unhappy that they've got something that's not very good. It's kind of like being a sports car enthusiast and having a real fancy looking car and having 150 horsepower, and then somebody puts out the same kind of car and it's got 500 horsepower. You know, that guy's going to feel kind of like crap because his buddy's got one that with 500 horsepower, a lot more power, and probably a lot more performance as well. So that's about. What do you think of that, Trish?
Yeah, I think that there's probably been a lot of times, like yesterday we were talking about the history of disruptive technology. I'm sure that, well, I know there was that story about Henry Ford and the kind of engine he wanted, and it didn't exist, from Think and Grow Rich. Do you maybe want to talk about that story about Henry Ford? Because I don't remember the details.
Yeah,
he was trying to make something that they didn't have. And
right. Well, of course, Henry Ford had a lot of experts at his fingertips, and he told them, he sat down at one point in time and said, "I want to make an 8-cylinder motor out of a single block of steel." And his engineers said, they just said right off the bat, "It can't be done." And he says, his response was so unusual that well, I want to have it and it will be done, and get to work on it. And so his engineers got to work on it, and after 6 months they came back and told him the same thing. "We're working on it, but we figured it can be done with a 2-component, but not a single piece of steel to make 8 cylinders." He says, "Well, I know you're almost there, so just keep working on it." And he wouldn't take "no, we can't do it" for an answer. He didn't really push them into getting the job done. He just guided them and told them that they were going to do it, and that they could come back and tell him all about it when they had completed it. So it's kind of crazy answers to what their negative attitude was. He came back with a positive attitude that you're going to do it, you just got to keep working on it. You're just about there. I can sense it. And I think that's really powerful on how you can get things done that way, because then his engineers started thinking themselves, "Hey, I think the boss is right. We're going to do this." And when they have that harmonious attitude going on working on a project, guess what happened? They ended up figuring it out. A couple of the engineers tried a few different things, and boom, they had the V8 block motor produced. I don't know what year that was, but quite an achievement when you consider it, that of what it looks like and how it works. It's really a major engineering achievement. I feel like I've been talking for like 45 minutes. It's only been 26. I'm starting to lose my voice. Yeah,
Well,
and so
something else that I was hoping that you could touch on. As I've always been super impressed with when you're getting parts and how you're able to get samples from companies, and I think it would be really valuable for people that are watching that have their own disruptive technology that they're trying to bring to market, how they can uh, find or how they can talk companies into giving them samples of the products, and also like you talked about recycling, how to look for potential options as far as finding something like turning garbage into gold, basically, by discovering the uses for those parts. But first, the negotiating with suppliers. Did you get that?
yeah, oh yeah. From day one, I was always told by my advisory committee and people that I worked with locally that it was. I think it started when I think it was started. It started with when I was working on silicon molds, and I went to this supplier who was a great supplier. And this molding material, this silicon molding material, was still relatively new. And he asked me what I was doing and what I was trying to do. So he took a general interest. The salesman took a general interest in what I was working on. And I said, well, I'm trying to do this with polyurethane and this and blah, blah, blah. And he says, oh, you're working with urethane? Well, then you'll probably want to use this type of silicon because it's designed to work with polyurethane. And however, we also have this one here. So why don't you take them both, take them home, and make some molds with them, and then get back to me and tell me which one works the best. And that, I think that has you have to credit the salesman for having that sort of attitude because Dow Corning was selling generally a new product, and I'm sure he was instructed by Dow Corning that we want to find uses for this stuff. Go out and find these guys, these people that are doing stuff that's new, disruptive technology, and satisfy them. Make your customers satisfied, and that's what they did. And I stayed satisfied. I'm still a customer after about 30 years of the Dow Corning brands. Although they changed the company name, I still buy their brands. And recently, jump ahead 30 years, I can the possibility or the ability to do that today for entrepreneurs is now mainly, I think China is now got that, they're in that headspace now where they've got products and they will sample these products to your company just because they're in the market and they want your business. And everybody knows it that the Chinese and other Asian markets are manufacturing similar products that are manufactured here in North America, but way cheaper. They're a communist state, and so a lot of their products are being manufactured for a lot less money simply because they're a communist country. Oh, it's Tadashi. I'll have to call him back.
Oh, okay.
I just had the phone ring there. That just totally blew my concentration. Sorry, I just received an important phone call. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The getting the samples, right?
Negotiating for samples, yeah.
Right. The funny thing is, with now negotiating with any company that is interested in what you're doing, what you're going to be producing in your company, you should have a business plan. Everybody should know that. If you've got disruptive technology, you got to start with a business plan so that you know yourself that what you're working on is feasible, that it's a feasible idea. And when you do have a business plan, you can project what your usage of certain parts are going to be. And so for King Sunshine Solar Systems, although our business plan keeps getting bumped, well, it's a living thing. It just lives, and our plan is to produce 880,000 of our units in the year 2016. It was 2015, but now it's 2016. And so when a company hears that, well, how many of these units you're going to need once your prototype works, and you say a number like that, guess what? They want to be in business with you. Why? Because you're going to be buying 880,000 units from them in that year. So you don't want to bullshit people. You want to make sure that your numbers make sense with your technology, whatever that disruptive technology is going to be. It's got to make sense, and you got to know that people are going to want it. Some companies like to see what they call evaluation done on a business. I don't know if that's so important. I don't know if a lot of other business people think that's important. As long as you know what you're going to do and you stick to your plan, feasibility studies, yeah, you can go pay someone a schwack of money and get a feasibility study done, but is it really based on anything more than what you've already planned in your business? I don't think it is. If you know what your product's going to do, and if you know people that are going to want to purchase your product just from your surveys and from just conversations with what you're working on, you can make pretty good plans with how many of these units you can produce in X amount of time with X amount of employees. So when you're producing your prototype, you have to know these numbers when talking to the suppliers of parts that are going to be needed for your equipment. And like I said, big corporations like Google and General Electric and it's another big outfit. Nothing's coming to mind right now, but big manufacturers. I know GE is a big manufacturer of a lot of different things. Canadian Solar, they're producing. I think they're the third largest photovoltaic manufacturer now. Their products come from China. They're not a disruptive technology, not so much in the way of a new technology in the solar market. However, they are disruptive technology.
At one time they were, though. Like when they start, they kind of always are.
Canadian Solar, I think, started with the little battery trickle charge.
No, I mean, not Canadian Solar. I mean, solar panels were disruptive technology when NASA came out with them, weren't they? But how old are they?
Well, they've been using them on space exploration, I think, since the 60s, possibly the 50s. So it was new technology for them. I wouldn't even call it disruptive. It's just, that's a really good point, Trish, because solar panels just recently became a disruptive technology. Why? Because people do not want to be part of this whole hydrocarbon burning world that we're living in. And so whether it's gas or diesel or coal or whatever, using solar panels, yeah, you can make electricity by using it. You need a heck of a lot of them. And they've become, what my point is that they've become, solar panels have become a disruptive technology in regards to renewable energy in 2014. Just like wind generators. Wind generators are another disruptive technology because they affect the diesel burning power plants and the coal burning power plants. So the more, an interesting concept to think that the more and more we get of these technologies coming on stream with solar, with wind, with biodiesel, with tide power, with the tides, hydropower, all these different types of clean energy or clean tech, renewable energy are going to be disrupting the entire globe when it comes to the desire to burn hydrocarbons. However, eventually people will opt out of burning hydrocarbons, and I think the globe will, the world will probably eventually outlaw the burning of hydrocarbons as soon as we start making all of our power using alternative energy that's clean. Because it'll be like, well, why do you want to burn something when you can produce a clean product without producing the atmosphere or producing pollution to go in the atmosphere? So I think there's a really good chance of that eventually happening, whereas solar power and wind power will no longer be disruptive technology. It'll be the standard of electrical production. How about that? I got to get a drink.
So the
I'll
other,
be right back.
well, what's that?
I just have to get a drink.
Okay, well, you should probably just wrap it up then.
Okay. I just needed to wet my whistle. I can't talk much more.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you should just wrap it up because I'm not able to really wrap it up or talk while you walk away. So.
Am I getting too technical?
No, it's just it's way too loud over here. I got all these kids here and teenagers and yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I hope everybody
good night, everybody. Go ahead.
I hope that everybody that joined us on this hangout tonight has learned something. I kind of also like to mention that we are in the final stages at King Sunshine Solar Systems of having our product actually ready for market. It's been 6 or 7 years now in the making, and that's one of the main reasons we started doing this Google Hangout, is that it's going to be a daily occurrence, and we're going to be talking about a lot of disruptive technologies. And I think, King Sunshine Solar Systems could be at the forefront of it, simply because we have something that's disruptive in the solar industry, and it doesn't involve any solar panels. So it's almost like a disruptive technology. And I was discussing this with Trish earlier today, that what we'd like to do is at a different time of day have a live global hangout during daylight when we have a nice sunny day here where our machine is, and then we'd be able to show everybody live the solar heat collector and the electrocrown making electricity. So right now that date's kind of up in the air, but I think it's something that Trish and I kind of agree upon, that it would be really good to have people see this machine working live on a hangout with all the bells and whistles on and making the light bulb light up and producing electricity on a sunny day. So we will keep everybody posted when that happens. So, because we can't predict there was no sunshine here today. It was all cloudy. So it's going to be one of those things when we have a cloudy day, when we have a sunny day, and we have all our components in place and everything's working. And I can see that being before September, actually being able to have this live broadcast of our solar heat collector. in operation. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go to kingsss.ca, and you can see our invention the way it is right now. And it'll be soon. We keep updating it, so that's about it.
Yeah, we have to go. Larry has to make a very important call, and we'll tell you what that's all about when we know more. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.